Welcome to Gear Time Live, a game show where nothing is live and everyone wins, except sexism. Roll the intro nice and loud. For all the babes in the back, it's Gear Time Live.
Look at this gear, Gear Time Live. Look at this gear, Gear Time Live.
Look at this gear.
Gear Time Live.
Hey guys, Colleen here. I'm doing a new segment on my YouTube channel where I go to various repair shops, studios, etc. and interview all these awesome people who are in the audio industry. And I'm going to start by doing my first interview video here at my friend's audio repair shop. His name is Howard Bardach, and he owns the Audio Specialist repair shop. Howard, alongside with technician Jack Matson, repair a ton of stuff here, mostly stereo equipment, but we'll get more into that with them. So let's check it out. All right, Howard, so tell us about the type of equipment that you specialize in fixing here at Audio Specialist.
Well, because of my age and the color of my hair has become my asset, I had to limit myself because there's so much junk out there that I got tired of working on junk.
You learn over the years the things you don't necessarily want to fix.
And the stuff today, the new stuff, is not repairable and it's not supported properly. But in any event, I don't deal with it. I don't deal with any video and anything like that at all. It's old school audio, basically from the late 50s all the way up to the possibly very early 90s. So basically what it is, vacuum tube equipment, amplifiers, preamps, solid state receivers, speakers, preamps, equalizers. We really don't do any compressors or anything like that because that's considered professional. It's become very economically unfeasible, and I stopped that years ago, and I don't miss it as any surround sound receivers. I stopped taking them in because basically just about every surround sound receiver, the defect was, if it wasn't the outputs, it was the digital processing board.
And those become obsolete.
The nice thing about being in business and surviving so many years, you can pick and choose. Whereas I remember I had to taking anything that could come through my door.
We'll segue into what are some of your favorite types of units to fix, whether it be record player, stereo, whatever it is, but maybe give me a few of your favorite pieces that you enjoy fixing.
The simpler the better. The old Empire Troubadour turntables. I liked them. Loved them when I was a kid of 8, 9 years old at the old audio shows at the Ambassador Hotel here in Los Angeles. It's a manual turntable with a 3-step pulley motor with a belt and a platter and on a switch. And they have skyrocketed now, which I knew they would, to crazy prices. Okay, that's one. Then the simple Techniques units. I like it simple. The KISS method. I'm old school. I don't deny it, and I'm proud of it. And I don't do field service anymore, aside from the age, but also because of the traffic here in Los Angeles. And the time and the waste of energy and the time. I remember when I was starting to phase out service calls, by the time I got back to the service center, I was wiped out. I said, how can I go back and do work? I said, forget it. And it's a sad case because it's like doctors used to make house calls. Oh, I remember that when my pediatrician made house calls. That doesn't happen anymore. So it's just, but I try in my own way to offer very, very personalized service.
All right, Howard. So how about you tell us how you got into the repair world? I know it runs pretty deep with your family. So I'd love to hear about that.
Well, basically, I was born into it. My father was a avid music lover, classical music lover. He worked in the business. He was working for David Bogan Company in New York in the 50s, designing preamps and amplifiers for the company. And I always heard music in the house. And what happened was that he was presented with an offer that he couldn't turn down, was that Harman Kardon was expanding very quickly at that time. This was in the mid 50s. and they had a failure rate of equipment of over 40% on, and they needed help with the servicing of the unit. So at that time, also with the Cold War, go west, young man. That's what happened. We were all moved at the expense of Harman Kardon to move from New York to California, and he worked for them for well over 6 years, repairing and redesigning a lot of their equipment at the height of the stereophonic explosion of music and sound. I was fascinated by the music, by the electronics, by the buttons. I still remember his preamp when I was very, very young was a Bogan PR100A mono preamp. He had 2 of them for stereo and the 2 DL70 power amps. And I just loved pushing the buttons and pushing in also the cones on his speakers. As I got a little bit older, he was, doing things with his speaker system and electronics, and I kept watching him with his VTVM and the oscillator, and he kept saying, "Get out of here, go to bed." And how could I go to bed when I hear all these different frequencies being generated? And I just loved it.
So do you remember the first unit that you ever fixed?
I used to go on service calls on my bicycle. I was repairing televisions also, and then as I
How old were you at this time?
at television, what was it? 10 or 11, because my parents at the time had a television store, and I just, I liked working on televisions, but I didn't have the same enjoyment and satisfaction as stereo equipment. But I did it because there was more of it out there, and I got paid with, whatever I felt it was worth, and also I didn't have an overhead, so it was very, very inexpensive. And then I got older, and then I could buy records, because I knew people that were working at record stores at that time, and I used to do a lot of bartering for records and stereos, because everybody, had the receivers and the speakers they needed it fixed. I would repair it and then tell them this is how much it's going to be, and then they would say, okay, pick the records you want. And these were all new. They weren't used. And that was great. To me, it was a religious experience, almost like every Sunday afternoon going to the record store and seeing what records were out there now, and especially, the British pressings. In my day, good quality British pressings were $5, new, sealed, in $1972. My first bench was my bedroom dresser. I was still living at home, and my dad got me, I'll never forget, it was all thrashed. It was a Harman Kardon Citation 1, 2, and 3 X tuner for $80 back in the early 70s. That was when it was worthless. And of course they didn't work, and I stripped it down to the chassis, replaced tube sockets, and beefed up the resistors, not hot rodding it at all, but improving the reliability, and learning about bias runaway, plate voltages and getting zapped and this and that and the other. Noise, when the noise is still there when the volume control is all the way down, or is it only noisy when the volume is up? Things like that. So you learn, and then you start listening to the music from the equipment that you've built. And, in the wintertime it was great because I had a floor heater, having a 60-watt per channel tube amp in my bedroom. It was great. And, when my dad wasn't home, I could blast the stereo. And, of course, I wiped out woofer cones with Guess Who, Rain Dance and No Sugar Tonight and things like that. Of course, Zeppelin. And but music, I love music. I could never have the patience to rehearse playing instruments, because I learned how to play a couple of instruments, but give me a radio at the time or something, I just wanted to see what made it work. I tell people I enjoy electronics and music, so I mix both of them together. And that's why I have the best of both worlds. And like I said, tell the people, I'll do it as long as I physically and mentally can.
So how long have you been in business as audio specialist?
As a business, now 45 years. As a matter of fact, this year is 45. I would like to also say that as the business was growing, so was my workload, and I needed more help, and I was very reluctant looking for somebody because they had to meet my criteria, because it's my image and reputation, not theirs. By the will of the Almighty, I found a guy that responded to an ad because he read an article about me in the paper. Came for the interview. I liked him, and I said, "Look, simple like this. There's no contract. Try it. If it works, fine. If it doesn't work, then it doesn't work." And fellow Jack said, "Well, I don't know. I've been out of it for so long, and I really don't know if I can really handle it." I said, "There's no contract. Let's give it a shot and see, And the rest, as we say, is history. He's been with me now, I would say now 13 years, or 13 or 14 years.
June of 2006. So
Whatever. And I'll tell you this, it's been not only a wonderful experience, but it's also been a fantastic friendship. And to have the fact that both of us get along in many, many ways and are knowledgeable in our fields, I'm glad that he came by and it works out. I would have even be thrilled if I could find somebody half as good as Jack.
It's true. Yeah, I can speak from personal experience. You guys have a really great friendship, and I really respect the way you work together. So, Jack, tell us a little bit about how you got into repairing electronics, your love of music, anything that you want to say in that realm.
I have to go way back. I think I first got interested in thinking, gee, this might be a thing I could do for a living, would be back in the 60s. I was still in junior high school, and they were inviting us to do a science project. And going through random through the library and see what is, just looking for anything that might spark my interest. And I got into the electronics section, and there were how-to books and project books, and I said, wow, you can really do this. So I built my first electronic project, bought my first soldering iron. I had to start from scratch here. That would have been 1965, mid-60s, somewhere around there. AM radio, it's my crystal detector, and about a three transistor amp. My dad was not involved in the industry in any way, but he was a can-do type of person. If something needed fixing, he would try his hand at it. And that was back when the TV went out. You took the tubes and went out and checked them. And I got fascinated, and I says, I wonder if I can learn more about this. So I did learn television, the analog television. Mm-hmm. Things have changed a lot since then. One of my first jobs was in a factory in San Gabriel, right across from the mission. Not electronics, but they actually built mechanical adding machines with the gears and everything. The only thing electrical on it was the motor. We didn't have to crank it or anything like that. Mm-hmm. As a natural progression from that, they went into electronic calculators, which I eventually worked myself into. I was there for about 7 years, and then a friend called up in Santa Clarita and said they were looking for an electronics technician in their engineering department. And I was there for about probably a total of about 11 years.
And you were repairing the equipment? Actually,
at that point, it was engineering, so I was putting together prototypes. And doing more building. Learned some computer programming, because at the time you built the item, there was no software to operate it. Mm-hmm. So learned a little bit about programming, enough to see if it was wired correctly and it was doing what it was supposed to. All this time I was doing little repair things on the side.
So you really have a wide range of electronic background.
I would go have breakfast in the morning, and they had the paper there, and I was reading through it, and there was in the old green sheet, they called it, I guess, the Daily News. There was a picture, Valley News and green sheet. There's a picture of Howard on there in this shop that he'd been running at that time for 25, 30 years. And so came down not so much looking for a job as I got to see this place. And so I just found it fascinating.
So what was the learning curve like for you when you started here with repairing audio equipment?
I was a little nervous. I had done some repairs before, but I had been out of audio for many years, and but it came back pretty quickly. And of course, I'm still building from there.
It's never ending.
Because there's always something that you've never seen before.
Very true. All right, Jack, so tell us about the type of equipment that you enjoy fixing.
You know, I find it all rather fascinating, each in its own way. You talked about the simple, the power amps are usually pretty simple, the preamps. The turntables and changers are generally pretty much a mechanical thing, so that's a good change of pace.
What about reel-to-reels?
I enjoy. Again, as old as most of them are, it becomes mostly a mechanical issue because imagine driving a car for 40 years and never having it serviced. That's where the state of some of these are.
So in that case, you pretty much just disassemble the unit, clean, lubricate, whatever needs to be.
Sometimes just figure out, okay, how do you get this thing apart, because it's get out the heat gun and see if you can make that grease move. You know, it's fun because I have samples of all these at home that I still use.
What kind of music, radio, etc. do you guys like to listen to here?
Howard said earlier we have the same taste. Actually, we both have an eclectic taste. And of course, my favorite, I think all our favorites is about the time we were in high school and graduation and shortly thereafter. So 60s and 70s is my go-to.
Do you have a go-to album when you're testing record players? Is it like the same album that you reach for, or is
What is the same album I reach for that you can't stand anymore?
Andy Williams.
I think he trashed that one. No. My collections go back 100 years. Some of the things my grandfather had.
jazz, classical?
Yeah, and that I was raised on. Anything that you put on there and go around, I listened to. One of the remarkable things I found is the quartets of the early 1900s. That they found recorded very well on acoustic equipment.
Wow.
And in the 70s, I started hearing that again. And I said, these quartets are around. And somebody invited me to get involved with that. So I've been involved with what they refer to as barbershop quartets for 20, 25 years.
So you sing in a quartet?
Yes.
Well, you learn something new every day. That's really cool, Jack. I did not know that about you.
You did not know that.
Seeing my father listen to his stereo growing up and conducting the classical music, I even remember like jazz, the first album that I heard that turned me on to Count Basie. I remember what album it was. I remember what album it was that turned me on to Joe Williams, the singer, among other things. And and then my dad surprises me, buying certain albums growing up. Then, see, I like pop music, and he would bring home Simon and Garfunkel. And one time I remember it was Edgar Winter Group. I go, was my dad losing it? But he had also somewhat eclectic, but mostly it's jazz and classical he liked. And I just liked that too, but so much more.
regarding the wait time from the time a customer drops off a unit till the time it's fixed. Because for me personally, I would love to keep it between a certain time frame, but it tends to end up where it takes way longer than I anticipated. The backlog just piles up, but generally, do you find that people are happy, fine waiting for their equipment?
Yes, it used to be not that way, but now they're just first happy to find somebody that can repair it or is familiar with it, and they will wait.
Well, my hope is that with the resurgence of records, people playing tube guitar amps, in my case, people dusting off the old stereo equipment, and the appreciation for the vintage equipment, that there will be people out there who will want to learn and who will take the time and energy to actually learn so that this can continue. In this day and age, there's a lot of focus on things getting done quickly, being able instantaneously having information, etc. And this type of work really does take years and years and years. And as you said earlier, you're always learning new things, and it just takes the type of person with patience and desire to learn new skills.
Love for it.
Yeah, love for it is first and foremost.
Not making the money. Making the money is second. And I'm saying this with any profession, any trade. You only can learn so much out of the book, out of the school. You have to have hands-on. And believe me, a lot of burns, a lot of cuts, zaps, and all this, and one instance, I'm grateful to be alive because I did a stupid thing years ago.
Let's get into that, because I wanted to ask a little bit about horror stories or things of that nature that have happened on the job. So take it away.
I was this was before I had a business. I was working out of the garage, fixing TVs. I remember it was a 23-inch or 25-inch Admiral. I'll never forget it. I don't know what got into my mind. My mom was in the kitchen. I don't know if my dad was home, whatever. I was in the back working, and I went up to the 25,000-volt anode cap and put my hand on it. And all I remember is I got knocked out, fell down to a cement floor, but I remember before I passed out that the cement floor felt like a bunch of pillows. And then I woke up, and my heart was racing, and I'm going, oh God, thank God, thank God, thank God. And I told my mother, and I told my dad, they don't need it to know. And then one time, I did this a stupid thing. My dad, I was doing some work in my bedroom with a soldering iron, and I gave my dad the wrong end of the soldering iron, and oh my God.
All right, Jack, how about you? Any horror stories that you would like to share with us?
They always tell you when you're working on high voltage, keep one hand in your pocket, that type of thing. And I found that out as I was still living home with my parents' house, and I was working on something. We had a big bench in the one room that we weren't using too much, so I took it over as a workbench. And I was working on a piece of vacuum tube equipment, one that I had built sometime earlier, but I was doing something with it. And I don't know exactly what I did, but I tied across that, I think it was a 300-volt supply. And I've been shocked before, little, that kind of thing. This one I had heard of, but this is the first time I had where my muscles contracted. And I couldn't let go of it. But I had enough motion in the shoulders and arms that I could kind of toss it away.
That is terrifying.
Yeah, because for a moment you don't know. Oh, no.
I wanted to reiterate something my dear father said to me. The tragedy is when things are not disseminated and shared. When you pass away, it gets buried with you. And it's very, very true, because I've collected as much as I could from him in terms of information. I asked questions, and he said something to me. He says, when long gone and dead, I'll still be your father and I'll still tell you what to do. And he was 100% right. And it's just, and I feel his presence here. And I'll show you later one of the pictures that was taken when he was in the lab at David Bogan Company. He's a big part. It was a big part of my life, and a lot of things, tricks, and experiences and repairs and things like that are from him. But also, I'm not saying he didn't piss me off, but I always liked working for him and with him. And the hard thing to accept and swallow was, as he was getting older and he wanted to help me, as a good son, I would want him to help me, and I looked at some of the work he would do, and it was tragically atrocious because he was getting older. His eyesight was, and I saw some of his early work. It was meticulous, and I would tell my mom, what do I do? What do I do? Okay, so I had to go in, at night and correct what it was done. But, because the mental state of not being able to help, and then I would give him jobs like, pick up and delivery of things and all that.
Well, should we take a little stroll through the shop and you can show us some cool stuff?
So here is basically where a lot of the equipment is brought in. Also, there's equipment here that's for sale, believe it or not. The inventory does change a lot. The inventory does change often. Here we got a pair of vintage JBLs, Macintosh, Kenwood,
a lot of really great stuff.
Yeah, there's my Empire Troubadour with the gold turntable there. It's mine. I just look at it and it's like, it makes you feel young. Don't listen to it, but I have one at home that I listen to it when I have an opportunity, but I listen to everybody else's equipment more than my own.
So this is a Macintosh right here?
That's an MC30, yeah. I have the other one in the back. That's to be worked on.
Those are some big transformers on that thing.
Yeah. I have here a pair of English large bookshelf speakers that I have to finally move into the front because I've made more room, but they're so damn heavy.
And these are for sale?
Yes, they are.
Those are beautiful speakers. Someone come get these out of here.
All original. And this is, again, stuff that most of this stuff is either customer units or units here that we will eventually bring back to life and sell. But of course, customers' units always have priority.
And are these some of your small parts bins over here?
Yeah, some of the parts bins, yes. Capacitors, resistors, transistors, and stylized Macintosh with the very common broken glass. The Harman Kardon Citation 2. The granddaddy of the tube amps, in my opinion. This still is tube box from my dad when he was working at Bogan. These were the lab samples. Let's see if I have anything here that still... Let's see. No, that's not that. It was 6C4s from Raytheon. A 6C4 is half of a 12AT7. But you can see, as old as it is, the paper is so brittle. And of course, here you got Telefunken, because these were Telefunkens originally, all of them. Well, whatever. Oh wait, here's one, I think. Yeah, Raytheon. Here's the date. 6C4 Raytheon engineering sample, December 17th, 1956.
Wow. All right, well, that about wraps it up. Thank you guys so much for hanging out and showing me around the shop and talking about a lot of cool electronics. So if you're in the Los Angeles area, Audio Specialist is located in North Hollywood. If you have any vintage stereo equipment, cool stuff like that needs to be fixed, give Howard a call. If you're looking to buy anything, give Howard a call. He's a really great guy and he's here to help you. Both of these guys, Jack and Howard, do great work, so I'm very blessed to know them. Until next time, I'll see you guys later.